Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing the next review in my palette roulette series, in which I choose a palette that is in my collection that might also be in your collection, and I utilize it for a week, and then I come back to you and I talk to you about my experiences with the palette. We do some live swatches, and I show you some pictures of the eye looks I was able to create, and I hope that sounds like something you're in for today. That sounds like something you're interested in. Today we're going to be going over the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette. For those of you new, hi, my name is Donna. I am a lover of all things high-end colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a field leader for Ulta Beauty, and I get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you that education through things like reviews on my channel, but you're still going to see all the regular beauty YouTube content creation that is out there on everybody else's channel, but I just kind of like to talk about makeup, and that's what I'm out here doing, and I hope that you find that it brings solace to your soul in the way it does mine, and you'll want to stick around. You'll want to subscribe before you go, and you'll give this video a thumbs up and do all the things, hit the notification bell, blah 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 blah. You know the drill. Let's roll into this review. So today we are reviewing the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette. This is the Rose palette, and it is super reflective, very mirrored, so I'm going to try not to hold it up as much as possible, but I will hold it up so that you guys can see what it looks like. Here we go. This is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette. This palette comes in at $68. And on Sephora, it has 4.9 star rating with 674 reviews. On Patrick Ta, it has a 4.8 star rating with 46 reviews. And on Google, it has a 4.9 star rating with 787 reviews. This is a gluten-free and cruelty-free eyeshadow palette. I did try and wipe them off, but with my makeup eraser, and it still looks all smudgy because that's not necessarily, you know, it has makeup all over it. It is not hard to smudge this up. What I will say about this is I kind of dig the like frame that is around it. And if you need to use it as a vanity, you could use this side just as well as you could use this side, which has a wonderful mirror in it. And then this is what the palette looks like. So there are 12 shadows in this palette, 3 finishes. There's cream, matte, and shimmer. There are 2 creams, which are located right here under this door. Each one of these creams comes in at 0.065 ounces of product, and then the 10 other shades also come in at 0.065 ounces of product. This could be legitimately your one and done eyeshadow palette. This is supposed to be those neutral eyeshadows with a kick of rose, right? So for those of you that are hashtag rose as a neutral kind of people, I'm a hashtag purple as a neutral kind of person, but I also love me some oranges, reds, those kind of tones on my eyes. I think that these tones really do suit my overall complexion, so this was right up my alley. I wasn't super enthralled with the first palette he put out because it was just a bunch of browns, and that's just not my color story, and y'all know that. But this one is actually a YouTuber made me buy it kind of moment. Like, I have a lot of people that I watch out there, and all of them rave about this palette so much that I was like, oh yes, I need to pick that up. And then I was in Sephora and elected to pick it up because I saw it in person and actually got to touch it. And I really have to say, these mattes are so silky to the touch. This door doesn't want to stay shut like that. The 2 creams here can be used as cream eyeshadow. They can also be used as a base. I think that that's what they're in there for. The darker one is in my eye look today. It's actually what's blended out on my lower lash line as well. I used the lighter one the other day in a look and actually packed shimmers on top of it. I pleasantly was surprised when 10 hours into my day, like it hadn't creased, it hadn't created any kind of movement on my eyes. So I really do like the creams in here. They're very reminiscent also about the feeling that I get from his cream blushes also. I love the creams in here, and I think that it's wonderful that you get two very different tones of cream. You have a nice like rosy beige tone and then a dark brown tone as well. But what I love most about it is these are not replicated in the mattes either. They're two very different tones of shadow in this palette that you can utilize as a standalone cream or as a base. The mattes in here are, like I said earlier, what kind of drew me in. I mean, yes, the shimmers are beautiful, but the mattes, the silkiness of the mattes to the touch was crazy sauce to me. They are super, super pigmented also from the very get. There is no like finessing that you have to do with the shadow. It's automatically there. What I would say about the mattes though is that these two shadows here really didn't both need to be in this palette because they look very, very similar on an eye look. To be honest, both of them are in my eye look today, but I don't really think that you can negotiate which is which in my eye look. I did use almost every single shadow in this palette today. The only two that I did not use are these two here, but every other eyeshadow is, including the creams, is in my eyeshadow look today. The shimmers in this palette are mostly sheer. So when you look at it, you're like, oh, those are beautiful shimmers. And that's what I did in Sephora as well. There are two of them that are kind of duochromy, if I'm honest. I feel like they kind of have a wee bit of a shift to them, even though they're not like slated as duochromes on the website. They definitely have a little bit of a shift to them, but for the most part, these shimmers are very sheer. I have the gold on my inner corner today, and then this one on the most of the rest of the eyelid. This one is the only one that really isn't sheer, and it definitely has a different formula than the rest of them do. The rest of them are kind of a chunky topper kind of formulation, whereas this one really kind of leans more into a standard shimmer formula or maybe even a standard satin, but a little bit chunkier than a regular satin, if that makes any sense. So it is super impactful and beautiful on an eye look, but I think it leans very satin-esque than the other shimmers do. These are powdery in the pan, but that doesn't translate to fallout all over your face, which I was super grateful for. And I do think that there is a lot of nuance and variation that you can get from this palette. Even though it is a monochromatic color story, there is still a lot of variation that you can get. And one of the biggest reasons I think is because even these lighter shades down here do have quite a bit of pigmentation to them. Like this is not just your standard like beige tone. There's actually a little bit of pinkiness to it, and it shows up pinky on your eye look. So I think that you could do an all matte eye look here, and you could definitely see a lot of the variation in the tones. Like I said, the only two that I think that didn't need to be in this palette at the same time are these two. I would have loved to have seen one of them lean a little bit more rosy, and then have this one be a little bit more maybe mauve-y. I don't know. I don't know what would have been the perfect mix, but I can tell you that those two look very, very similar on an eye look, but those are the only two in the palette that really do. As I said, it doesn't really translate to fallout on the face, even though the pans are pretty powdery. But with that being said, also the wear time of this is like somewhere around 10 to 12 hours, and that was me taking my makeup off, not these eyeshadows fading. I didn't notice any significant fading or movement, and I was really, really pleasantly surprised with the cream shadows in this eyeshadow palette because they didn't break down any sooner than that either, which for me is kind of unheard of because usually cream eyeshadows break down for me. I think we heard that when I was reviewing some of the Sydney Grace cream eyeshadows in my last Shop My Stash. Although those might have been just because they were older in my collection, if I'm honest. These do also perform very, very nicely with or without a primer. I think that there's one eye look specifically, actually it's the eye look that I used the cream eyeshadow as a base for the shimmers that I didn't use any primer, and that eyeshadow looked honestly, that eyeshadow look lasted forever because I fell asleep on the couch. So the next morning when I woke up, that eyeshadow look was still on my face, and there was very little movement in the eyeshadow look, and I don't necessarily sleep like this. This is not how I sleep. I don't sit still. Like, I thrash all over the place. My husband hates it, but there's that. They last forever. They last so long. So I would say at least 10 hours, maybe even 12 hours, maybe even longer, dependent on how crazy you are in your day, or how sweaty you are, or how maybe even oily your eyelids get. I don't have oily eyelids, so it could be much shorter for an oily eyelid person, but I didn't have a problem with the wear time. There was a good longevity to these shadows. I also did not see any voiding, but there was a smidge bit of patchiness on occasion when blending out some of the darker shades. Like, I would say these two shades specifically, but it didn't really stay that way. So like, as you took other shadows onto those shadows, like there wasn't any patchiness that was apparent in the end look of the eye look, even though I maybe had started with a little bit of patchiness in the eye look when I was doing it. I would say also that the two creams are probably best used. I would place them with a brush, but then use my finger to blend them out. And I thought that that was how they moved around best. And maybe it's because of the warmth of your finger, you know, it kind of keeps it emollient a little bit longer. The shimmers were also best used with your finger if you were trying to pick them up with a brush, except for that darker one that is a little bit more of a satin formula. If you were trying to pick them up with a brush, it really did not work at all. So I would say that I really loved this palette. I would give this probably a good 4.8 as well. 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. I don't think I would go any lower than a 4.7 if I'm honest. I had a really great time with these shadows. They were all very, very pigmented. I loved every single eye look I had using this palette, and I even used the gold a couple times. Today is the second time I'm using it. It's in my inner corner, and I actually quite love this eye look. I love the creams, which I don't always love the creams. And it was a 50-50 mix of what I was getting. So I had 50% mattes, 50% glitters, and then 2 cream eyeshadows. I didn't even have to think about a base, to be honest, because the base was in there. I do think that the shimmers stay better on your eye with a tacky base, but I didn't think it was necessary, to be honest. As long as you were using one of the bases in here, they still stuck to that. They do go all over your face in application, but I did not see them go all over my face throughout the day. So with that said, let's do some swatchy swatches, and then we will pick a new palette and get you out of here. So I'm going to do the creams first, and then I'm going to go across the top and then across the mattes. So the first two are the creams, and let's do them right here. This one is called Loyal, and it is a cream rose beige. And then we have Unfaithful, which is a red toned, like chocolate brown. For mattes, we have Heartache, which is a deep brown that is quite a bit different than the other brown. This one's a little bit more cool tone than that cream brown, which I appreciated. Then we have Passion, which is a plummy brown. Then we have Devotion, which is a pinky mauve. Then we have Amour, which is a milky pink. Then we have Crush, which is a pale pink. I'm going to go after those last two. This one is Devotion, and this one is, Amour, and this one is Crush. So those are those last two that I swatched over here that don't look amazing. Swatched out again. For the shimmers, I have Affair, which is a metallic satiny burgundy shade, and it does have a little bit of a pink shift to it. Then I have Desire, which I think is kind of a duochrome. It is definitely a corally rose shade, but it kind of shifts golden. Then we have Lust, which is definitely a duochrome. You guys can see that's a wee bit of a topper more than anything else. There's no real base to this, but it's kind of got this pinky, pearly, blue, like lavender shiftiness to it. It's really, really pretty. Then we have Adore. I'm sorry, this one's called Romance, and it's kind of a cooler, like pink duochrome topper, but has a little bit of a shiftiness to it as well. It has a little bit of a blue sparkle to it. This one is definitely duochromatic. This one is maybe duochromatic. And then the last one is Adore. And Adore is kind of a pinky, champagne-y, rose gold. Those are the shadows in this palette. And I think you can see that there is a lot of nuance to this, definitely a lot of variation. You're gonna get a full meal deal with this eyeshadow palette. Like, it's going to be able to give you everything that you need to create multiple different eye looks. This could be a person's one and done eyeshadow palette. I don't think that this shade is light enough to be like a brow bone shade, but it could be your inner corner shade for sure. I also think that the rest of these are kind of, these specifically are way too chunky to be a brow bone shade or an inner corner shade. I don't like them on my inner corner because I don't like the chunkiness of them, but I do like this palette overall. I would say that I've been struggling with my palette also with the packaging. I mean, it's not metal by any means, it's a plastic, but this piece that holds the shadows in, this like, you know, piece that kind of sits in here in the palette, for whatever reason keeps popping up, and then my lid gets snagged on it and doesn't want to close or doesn't want to open. They're not necessarily the most fragile shadows on the planet, but they also are not fragile. As a matter of fact, most of the poor reviews that I saw on the websites that I went into see what their star ratings were, most of the lower star ratings were because the palette shattered on shipment. So just know that my palette works fine, but there is a little bit of a snag sometimes with that center section that holds all the shadows in it. So I am just very, very careful with it. It is a $68 eyeshadow palette for, 12 shadows. I don't know that I necessarily believe that it's worth $68, but it is what you make of it. Like, it could be worth $68 if that's what you think is the worthiness of this palette. I do think that it's worth, like, if you're Rouge or if you're, if you take part of the Sephora sales, I do think that even getting a small discount on it makes this palette more worth it, in my opinion. I wouldn't ever, I don't think I'd ever pay $68 for these shadows again. They are great. I just don't think that they're $68. I don't think it's worth $68. I think it's probably worth $55, which is what I would pay for like an ABH palette. I don't think it's worth more than a Natasha Denona 15-pen eyeshadow palette, if I'm honest. That's maybe my bias because she's my favorite, and yeah. That's maybe my bias. So with that said, I am going to go pick the new palette. I will be right back. All right. Speaking of Natasha Denona, I think the next time, I don't have any of her middies or anything like that anymore to review, but I do have some of her 5-pan palettes. So I do have these two that were in BoxyCharms. My mom gave these to me. This is Natasha Denona 5-pan in Peak, and Natasha Denona 5-pan in Ayana. One's warm tone, one's cool tone, and then we're gonna match it up with my Natasha Denona Mini Xenon. I did purchase these, and my mother gave me these out of her BoxyCharm gifts. So these will be the 15 eyeshadows, or the 3 palettes, I guess, that we're reviewing next time, and I hope that you'll want to come and watch me. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette. or these palettes. If you have them, I would be interested to hear your thoughts. And with that said, I just hope that you guys are having a great day, a great month, a great year so far. I hope that you and yours are healthy, that you're safe, that you're sound, that you're getting along as best you can in this crazy world that we're living in right now. And I hope that you are all loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye, friends.